Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing well. Welcome to today's true crime video. Before we get started, I want to explain why I haven't done a true crime video in a while, because I have been seeing a lot of comments asking when the next one is going to be, why I haven't made one, etc, etc. I don't know if it's just me and my channel, but I have noticed that YouTube does not like true crime videos lately. They never have, but lately, at least for me and my channel, they've been cracking down on it a little bit. My true crime videos never used to be demonetized, ever. And within the last couple of months, they have all gotten demonetized. And I just don't want to get in trouble with YouTube as well. My channel has always been in excellent standing with YouTube guidelines, and so I just want to be careful, you know. I am going to do a little experiment with this video, and I am not going to put any pictures in it. Not saying that's going to be for every true crime video moving forward, because I actually enjoy putting pictures in there, and I know that you guys enjoy seeing them because it helps you visualize the story that I'm telling you. But just for this video, I'm going to test it out, not put any pictures in the video, and see if maybe that makes YouTube a little happier. So we'll just see. But this case came from my community post that I'm actually going to pull up right now so that I can tell you who exactly requested it. I made a community post last week asking for true crime suggestions, and I said the one with the most likes I will do. And so this case was requested by Stesh, is the username, STESH, and that was the one that won. And so we are going to be talking about the case of Randy Lee Allen versus the state of Texas. I'm going to give you one last disclaimer before we start, and then I will get into it. This case involves the mistreatment of a young girl, a minor. She was 12 years old. It has topics of kidnapping, it has topics of sexual assault, all including a minor. So if that is too much for you, if you think that is going to trigger you, then I would click away from this video before I start telling the story, because this video will not be for you. I also want to point out that the case does give the girl a name, but it is not her real name. Again, she is a minor, so to protect her identity and her privacy and her family's privacy, it is not her real name. It is just for storytelling purposes. Okay, so let's get into it, shall we? So again, we are talking about a man by the name of Randy Lee Allen. He was a married man. He was married for, we'll get into it, it's somewhere in my notes, but I'm pretty sure it was, he was married for 17 years, and he had a 7-year-old son. So he was a husband and a father with no criminal record. Okay, so our story starts on a Wednesday afternoon in Freeport, Texas. 12-year-old Dana Stenson walks the few blocks to her church from her home by herself to go to her Bible study class. It's not clear how often she would walk by herself, but that day when she got to the church, she had a hard time finding her classroom, and it didn't seem like anybody was around. 2 hours later, when the class should have been over, she did not return home. And immediately, her mother and her father, of course, started to worry. Her mother went straight to the church to look and she actually just never showed up for class. So her mother said right away she knew something was very, very wrong. It was unlike Dana, and just her motherly instincts kicked in, and she knew something was very, very wrong. So of course they called the police. The police got involved. Neighbors assisted in the search. They had the town looking for her. No one could find her. Her father was the local prison guard, or one of them, and his immediate thought was one of his ex-prisoners or ex-convicts that had gotten out of jail was seeking, revenge on him and targeted his daughter. That was not the case, but that was her father's immediate thought. So, as any parent would, they are in a full-on panic mode. Later that night, it was a little after 10 p.m., there were a group of boys playing basketball at a park, and this was in Oyster Creek, Texas. And as they were playing, a 12-year-old girl, Dana, walks up to them and tells them that she had just been kidnapped. Now, authorities said that this park, there really wasn't much around in this part of town. Especially at night, it was pitch black. They said you would think that you were just in the middle of nowhere. And she was walking around at night trying to find people, and she found these teenage boys playing basketball. So she was taken to police headquarters, where she was reunited with her family. And she started to explain to authorities, to her parents, what had happened to her, which we will get into what she says. But it's important to note here that she tells them, I was kidnapped, he did this, this, and this to me. But she was so calm, almost like emotionless. And so at first they were just thinking, she's a young girl who is seeking attention. They flat out told her that they didn't believe her. And they said, her demeanor was just extremely odd, not what, it should be for someone who went through what she was describing. So here's what she told police, okay? She said she was in the church parking lot. As I said, she was going to her Sunday school class. She couldn't find her classroom. This girl, as you'll see during this case, had such an amazing photographic memory. You'll understand why I'm saying that, but she began to describe him. And she said a white, middle-aged man stopped and, asked, where are you going? What are you looking for? She told him, and he said, oh, yeah, I'll show you. I'll walk you to the door. I have to go that way anyway. And so he started leading her to another part of the parking lot. He then grabbed her, forced her into his van, tied her up, her feet, her wrists, and duct tape over her mouth. And he forced her into a wooden coffin-like box, is how she described it. And she noted that the inside of the box was lined with carpet. She said he then drove the van somewhere near the ocean, and she knew that because she could hear the waves. After parking, this is when he assaulted her. And then she said later on that an hour or two later he tried to assault her again, but she was able to, we'll get into it later, but she basically didn't let him. This girl is amazing. She also noted that he had a knife. These are all things she was telling police. And she told him, she begged him, she said, you're not going to do this to me anymore. Please let me go. So he said to her, I'll let you go, but you have to promise that you're not going to tell anybody anything. And he threatened her and said, I know everything about you, and I will find you, and I will kill you. That's how he threatened her. But even so, that's when he drove her to that deserted area by the park and let her go, untied her, and pushed her out of the van and said, go. So that's everything she told police. So like I said, investigators straight up was like, no, she's lying. They told her, we don't believe you. You're too, she was too calm. And even like her dad, I watched an interview, and even he was saying, he was like, I didn't understand why they kept like asking her these questions and not believing her. They really didn't believe her. So there were a few red flags. One, her demeanor was too calm. Two, she was saying she was taken in broad daylight in a church parking lot, but nobody saw it. I'm rolling my eyes because just, they should have believed her. But anyway, they should have believed her right away. But anyway, they also noticed that the kidnapper dropped her off in an area that she was somewhat familiar with. It was one of her classmates and friends from school. He was a boy, and from doing some digging, investigators found out that they were like boyfriend and girlfriend, or like people described them, like their fellow classmates described them as that. And so they thought, she was just in the area, because that's how she was able to find the park, was that she was somewhat familiar with the area. And investigators, when they started telling her that they didn't believe her, that was the first time that she showed really any emotion. They said she teared up more when they told her they didn't believe her than when she was actually telling them what happened to her. She started to tear up and get very frustrated, but still she was so strong, and she told them, she looked them in the eye and she said, everything that I am telling you is true. You don't have to believe me, but I'm not lying. 12-year-old girl. So police sent her home, but they took her pullover sweatshirt, her jeans, and her socks to try to get any sort of evidence, just in case. Then they asked her to come back the next day for an interview. They wanted to basically ask her the same questions and see if her story varied, if any parts of her story faltered, to see if she was lying or if it really happened. Because if it really happened, they thought, okay, everything she's going to say should be exactly the same. When they brought her in, though, they noticed something different. They saw her wrists and this area on her face, and there were red-like bruise marks starting to form from the rope and the tape, exactly where she had told them the day before she had been tied up. They slowly started to notice marks on her skin. So they're like, oh, alright. Their gears started turning a little bit. She then could tell them exactly what the man looked like. She said he had blonde hair, blue eyes, he was white, he was in his mid-40s, and he had a medium build. So then they're like, wow, okay, she can really tell us everything, like, it's so detailed, maybe this did happen. So then they tell her parents to take her to the hospital for a physical exam to look for any evidence, what I mean by that. But it was already the next day. She had showered, and it was too late. They couldn't get any evidence, which drives me crazy. And even, I was thinking about it, okay, the investigators didn't believe her, fine. But if her parents should have taken her that day to the hospital for that exam. I don't want to blame. I'm not putting blame. I'm really not trying to do that, but it's just frustrating because I bet if they had taken her to the hospital before she had showered, before, almost 24 hours had passed, they maybe would have found something, but yes, so investigators are now really starting to get, invested in this case. And so they asked her, okay, is there anything else that you remember? And she recalled that the van had the word wood on it. noticed that inside the van there was an orange cooler, you know, those orange igloo coolers, so they put like Gatorade or whatever. She remembered that it said something like Home Depot or something on the outside of the cooler, and in the cooler were cans of Dr. Pepper. All of that while struggling, while she was able to, you know, just keep that like visual snapshot in her mind and tell them all of this. She also told them that the carpeting in the car on the floor was gray. She told them that the box was lined with dark blue carpet and that the rope was blue and white. She was able to tell them all that. And so there was a trace evidence analyst working at this police department named 𝓢𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪, something like that, or 𝓢𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪, something like that. But she did amazing work, and she used tape lifts, so you put tape on it and kind of pull off any fibers that you can get. She did that on her clothes, and she found numerous fibers, and she found types of fibers that are often found in carpets and in rope, and it matched the colors exactly the way that Dana described them. So it was all starting to make sense. So investigators went public with the case. They put all the information in the newspaper in hopes that somebody had seen something or knew something or knew, you know, the van or anything like that. 2 days after the kidnapping happened, one of Dana's neighbors called authorities and said he may have witnessed some or, you know, part of the kidnapping. He said he saw a van fitting Dana's description circling the church that day, and then saw the van leave the church around 5:30, 5:45, and never come back. That was indeed the van that Dana was in. And the time frame, everything matched all the information that investigators had already. So then investigators started searching the phone book for any companies that, you know, had the word wood in it or did any sort of carpentry or anything like that, and they found one that had vans that fit the description. So the company was called Surfside Installation, and it was owned by 36-year-old Randy Lee Allen. Again, there's my notes. Married for 17 years, father of a 7-year-old boy, no criminal record, family man, working man, no charges ever against him, nothing fishy, nothing like that. So they reached out to him, authorities reached out to him and said, hey, we think you may have witnessed a crime. We think you might have been in the area. Do you think you can come in and we can just ask you some questions about maybe anything that you saw? And they said he was more than willing. He said, sure. He went, and they started asking him questions about a kidnapping, and he said, well, I haven't heard anything about a kidnapping. I haven't seen anything. So they, you know, he said at that time, you know, I was out to eat with my wife and my son that night around that time, and his wife confirmed it. So, you know, investigators were like, alright, we maybe hit a dead end, right, because his alibi was confirmed. But they said, alright, you know, no problem, but before you go, do you mind if we just take a look inside your van? He said, sure. So they go in the van, and there's no coffin-like box that they can see, but there was the orange igloo cooler with the words Home Depot on it. The lid was off, and inside they saw cans of Dr. Pepper. The van's interior, the carpeting was gray, just like Dana had said. They also found blue and white rope fibers off of the carpet, and the shape of the fibers matched exactly the fibers that they took off of Dana's clothing. They went and then searched his home, and they found these pieces of lumber that they kind of thought, well, if you put those together and assemble them, they'll make a coffin-like box, like Dana described. So they asked him, hey, can you just put those pieces of wood together? Can you assemble them? Surprisingly, he agreed. He said, sure. And while doing so, he completely incriminated himself and threw himself under the bus. As he was doing it, he muttered basically to himself. He was talking to himself, but they heard him. And he said, well, she was a little one, so yeah, this is how I did it. And he said it super quiet under his breath. But they heard him. Why he would say that, I don't know. But they caught him right then and there. Investigators also noticed that there was blue carpeting-like material on the inside pieces of the box, just like Dana described to them. And when running tests, the fibers matched her clothing perfectly, or matched the ones on her clothing perfectly. The very last piece to the puzzle, investigators made a lineup of pictures of men in the area fitting the description that Dana gave them. And they showed it to her and said, if any of these look familiar to you, point them out. They showed her the lineup, the pictures, and they said it took her less than 5 seconds, less than 3, to look at it. She pointed at Randy. She said, that's him. He did this to me. No hesitation, no nothing. She was like, yep, that's him. So police confronted him again with all the information, all the evidence, everything that incriminated him, and he confessed. And he said, yes, he did it. He read his statement on video. I was only able to see like a split second of it, but yeah, he read his statement. He wrote one down and he read it out loud on video, and he basically said that he was circling the church looking for a victim that day, and Dana was the one he saw, and that's the one that he went for. But there was one thing that was still throwing investigators off, and they were saying, well, if he did this, right, how was he at dinner with his wife, and how, like, why is his wife confirming it, right? So that means that he was definitely at dinner. So how did he do this? Well, let me tell you, this sicko, sorry, but it's true, after he drove her to the ocean for the first time, right, and assaulted her, he then drove to his house with her locked in the box, left the van and her parked outside of his house, collected his wife and his son, took his wife's car to the restaurant, left her in the van the whole time at his house, and the carpeting made it soundproof, so she was screaming, no one heard her. They come back from dinner. He says, I still have some work to do, I gotta go back out, and drives off in his van. That is when he took her to the motel room, tried to assault her again, and this is where she stood up for herself. She had had enough. She looked at him and she said, you are not going to do this to me anymore. We're done here. You're not going to do this to me. And he was so thrown off because she took all the power. That 12-year-old little girl took all the power away from him. And he was so thrown off that that's when he took her back in the van, drove her to the deserted location, and let her go, and tried to threaten her and say, I will find you and kill you if you tell anybody. Thank God she didn't listen to that. Prosecutors actually believe that he intended to kill her. They also believe that, you know what, even though he doesn't have a criminal record, there have to be some dark parts of his past that just were never uncovered or never reported. Because either that or he woke up one day and said, I'm gonna go kidnap a little girl. You know, does that really just come out of nowhere? Probably not. So in September of 2003, he was convicted of kidnapping and sexual assault and received 2 consecutive years of 75 years in prison. They said that he didn't really show a lot of remorse. The only remorse he kind of showed was that he was caught, but he didn't really say sorry, you know, I was wrong, nothing like that. And so he spent the rest of his life in jail. I looked him up because I wanted to like get like a picture of him for the thumbnail, and I'm pretty sure he is no longer alive. Let me look. And I'm only saying that because when I googled him, it says obituary. Oh wait, no, this is another Randy Lee Allen. Okay, nope, this is an innocent Randy. Okay, well, R.I.P. So this is not the one from the case. Okay, never mind. So he's probably still alive and in jail. So this is just another episode of what the heck is wrong with people and how do people become this way. I would love to know. You guys know me. I would love to know his family history, his background, his parents, what his relationship with them was like. I would love to know, because to me that explains a lot. But anyway, that is the case of Randy Lee Allen and Dana Stenson. Again, not her real name, but so thank you to the person who requested this video. I hope that I did it justice, and I hope that you guys enjoyed. I will see how this true crime video does, and hopefully YouTube doesn't hate it or doesn't get mad at me for it, and then I can continue to make more often than I have been. And if not, then I don't know, we'll figure it out. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you in my next video.